I have shared on previous real side experiences that this simulator seems awash with the kind of body type that has the capacity to convert other body types to its own as a means of expansion of the species population, as a variation on the usual standard procreation method that most species employ. Whatever the means of population growth, it is really then simply that which has been decided by the particular species. It becomes then part of the species' collective consciousness as an idea, and effects whatever it is that has been collectively decided and agreed to, which effectively can be anything: extreme life longevity, particular abilities or skills, telepathy, shape-shifting, and so forth, or, as in this case, in regards to this particular real side experience, the particular means of population expansion. I have made mention of 3 overall species that I have encountered on the real side that boast alternative population increasing methods. Broadly speaking, we have the mutants, which somewhat infect other body types and convert them to their mutant kind, or assimilate them into a kind of a mass mutant collective organism. We have the vampires, who can transform other body types into their kind, and also the zombies, who, just as depicted in the movies, convert others through a bite. The mutants and vampires are exactly as they are shown to be. The zombies, however, tend to be more representational of other afflictions, chiefly those that are 5G and electromagnetic distorted frequency orientated, but that still have the ability to convert others to their kind, suggesting the possibility of nanotech transference, as the presence of nanos in every human body through the various delivery systems, when activated via the 5, 6, and 7G electromagnetism, is designed to transform humanity into a more robotic form, with the ability to transmit nanos to infect those who have evaded this mass species alteration, a little like as depicted with the Borg in Star Trek, as I have been shown on the real side. For I had been shown on several real side occasions how just prior to the final mass robotization stage, that it's as though it takes a few moments for the human species to be linked in with the computer systems that will control them directly through the robotic bodies they will shortly assume, and during this period the masses are reduced to a zombified state, as though having little or no conscious control of their own actions and thought-generating body vehicles, as if on standby, primed to be controlled through the technology they are now interfaced with, but a technology yet to fully activate. And in the meantime, humanity overall shuffles about aimlessly, just as shown in zombie movies, and more directly in Stephen King's version of the zombie apocalypse, called Cell, which interestingly is a zombie situation brought on via electromagnetic frequencies transmitted via all cell phones. This real side view would be a zombie-orientated one then, but these particular zombies had an altogether different means by which to convert others to their kind, a little along the lines of the mutants, as I will reveal. I would find myself not simply observing what was to transpire, but being a participant in the experience, and so it would be a far more immersive experience and more easily recalled, hence the general preference for direct involvement. I was with a group of individuals, their identities unknown to my personal self, but it was as though we were on a scouting expedition to discover this particular breed of zombie and report our findings on the physical at a later time. We would be in a kind of a gloomy, dimly lit labyrinth, reminiscent of a minotaur's lair, say. This labyrinth seemed to be somewhat of a containment for numerous, ill-intended beings and body types, all manner of body form distortion as a reflected effect of distortion and abrasively designed and unsupporting of life consciousnesses. So almost as though a real side zoo for the twisted and the distorted, that individuals such as myself and others could visit, and be shown the various diversity that has effected from consciousness in this simulator. But be assured, containment it may have seemed to be, but the species found within were not resigned to the labyrinth. They were at liberty to position themselves how they chose in creation, go where they wanted, just as it is with all individual body forms, all destination and creational positioning based simply on what each decides, etc. There were some extremely dark corridors, to the extent that nothing could be discerned, and my impressions via the real awareness revealed that the darker the area of the labyrinth, the darker and more abrasively inclined was the consciousness affected body forms that lurked there. And we seemed to have the objective to locate a particular species and verify its existence, and so we chose our route, avoiding the extremely dark corridors, though I was curious as to what would be found there. For what we were to locate turned out to be abrasive enough, but operated in relatively lighter areas of the labyrinth. What horrors might the gloomiest sections of the labyrinth unveil? Alas, I was never to be shown, at least for now, and instead we came across that which we had come to find, which as it transpired, and as I mentioned earlier, were zombies. Just as you see them in the movies, shuffling, corpse-like beings. I'm uncertain if something had caused them to be this way, or if this was their natural state, or indeed if they were human, or originally so, but they looked very humanoid as far as one could tell, but then many alien species do, and as I mentioned earlier, They had the ability to create more of their kind, not through bite or scratch, but by a means similar to the mutants, where the zombies would spray a kind of thick yellow mucus upon the target. Usually zombies, as depicted in the movies, have no inclination to make more of their kind, although the zombies that transmit the nanos just before mass human robotization do have this drive. And it was so with these zombies. They had no desire to kill or eat others, just to add to their numbers by spraying this mucus, and interestingly, they had to spray an individual 3 times for the zombification to take effect. Unfortunately, our group and myself would get sprayed, and the requisite number of times, 3, that should have facilitated a zombie transformation, and as we departed from the labyrinth, having completed our scouting assignment, verification gleaned of the existence of this particular type of zombie body form species now operating in creation, and like the mutants and vampires, on a mass conversion objective, we would now find ourselves in a quaint earth-like tavern, and here the tavern goers would be sealing the doors, blocking the windows, as the very zombies we had encountered and had been shown were apparently on their way. It seemed they preferred to attack at night, and suggested the potentiality of this becoming a physical level human experience scenario. As I said, the zombies and all contained within the labyrinth were not resigned to it. It had just been established as a kind of a viewing location of all things untoward, and the extent by which the species contained there could impact the experience of other individuals and species is, as always, agreement dependent. As I looked down at my arm, I would notice that it was tainted with the mucus I and my group had been sprayed with. We had been sprayed 3 times, and had been afflicted to an extent, though seemingly we had mitigated the zombification conversion process overall. I would, however, conceal my contaminated arm from the tavern dwellers, for they would unlikely take kindly to anyone who had been afflicted, even if marginally. The scene ended there, and really would serve as a heads-up of another potential creational hazard, another body form and species that's overall inclination is to convert others to their kind, and the final scene suggested the possibility of their incursion into the experiential affairs of humanity, through agreement installed, I would suggest, via the TV movies that depict such zombie apocalypse scenarios. Installed then are these as ideas in the human collective consciousness, which, as all installed ideas in a consciousness will do, will always effect their nature in some shape or form, facilitating the ability of such a species as the mucus spraying zombies to make their presence known and impact humanity. In a brief scene that followed, it appeared I was on a rescue operation of a kind. Of course, as the deciders, we effect our situations in which we are in predicaments that may require extraction. Through agreement have we allowed ourselves to say, be captured and contained by others, a kind of a contract or script all participants involved play out, secured however such an agreement may have been, usually as something that appeared a certain way on the surface, had a surface appeal, but behind it was intentionality as an idea to dominate and cause harm, and this idea then inadvertently taken on and agreed with through agreement to the beneficial surface idea, has us experience being the recipient of control and harm at the hands of others. But scripts and movies can be edited, added to. We can decide to include the potential roles of rescuers as an example. We could, in fact, tear up the script, identify and release the agreement that had effected our adverse situation, then the experience must transition to follow the now altered ideas, the altered movie script. But offering up the roles of a rescuer in our movies works just as well. Really then, the individual is rescuing themselves. They are just designating the task to another, and so is the position of a rescuer available, and others can decide to assume such a role. Generally, we will only rescue those where it makes sense to do so, awareness speaking. If, as an example, an individual is stepping up, but has been attacked or captured or contained, a common occurrence, as at the early stages of the process of awareness, of facing and releasing the agreements of the consciousness, the vast majority that are agreements to a control extended to the dark forces in all their forms. So as the dark forces see a stepping up individual, they are swift to take advantage of the agreements still unreleased, to impact the individual adversely in an effort to intimidate or derail their process of awareness. But the recipient of these dark force efforts will invariably create the idea potentiality of the rescuer, create the potential role that we can fulfill, that would make sense to assume, as life, awareness, always supports life. A recognition of awareness which intends to recognize the is, the essence of life, is as a support for everything that it is, all awareness as expressed through all consciousness effected body forms. But of course, with those who decide to remain consciousness and personal self immersed only, with no ears recognizing inattention, so to assist them would make little sense, as they have resigned themselves to always be the effects of their consciousness design that they are in complete agreement with, a consciousness overall designed as an agreement construct extended to the dark forces. And so we may rescue or assist them, assuming they set up the agreement idea that we can assume the role, but their agreements that allowed their predicament, their agreements to the dark forces' control is maintained. and so, as soon as we may rescue them, they can be recaptured again, and this could go on forever, until they address and release the agreements that are constantly and potentially always affecting situations in which they need assistance, and only then would it make sense to help them. And I have participated on numerous rescue efforts to extract StepUp individuals from the clutches of the dark forces. My success dependent on the agreement parameters of those I am assisting. Each individual is their own movie maker and producer, and we have to adhere to the scripts they provide us with. Anyway, I found myself on a kind of a beach setting. Bordering it would be a dense woodland, and I would be in the form of a bipedal, two-legged cat being and body type. Stationed on the beach would be various uniformed military types that my impressions revealed were Dark Force-affiliated militia, and the moment they saw me, so would they be motivated to attack and blast at me with their weapons. Typical Earth-like guns, nothing especially extraordinary or high-tech. I would evade their fire and slip into the surrounding woodlands, where the military characters would attempt to follow, but the woodlands seemed as though comprising of a number of dimensions all rolled into one, and each step would have me in a slightly different dimensional position, and become then invisible to the pursuing guards. Very frustrating for them, I would imagine, but nothing I was creating myself. It just seemed a feature of these curious woods, a useful feature to be sure. Within the woods, and across the various dimensional aspects of it, were all manner of twisted and distorted insect-like creatures and body forms, as though all the dimensions the wood comprised of connected to very unsavoury areas of creation that contained such beings, all of a malevolent and ill-intended nature, and would be inclined to attack me on sight also. So I was constantly on the move, a step into another dimension, to evade a certain insect-like monstrosity, just to encounter yet another in the dimension I now had entered. This was going nowhere, and I did have an objective, although my personal self didn't know it as yet, but just going along with what was a real awareness orchestrated assignment. So I exited the woods, continued evading the guards, as I said, everything based on agreement. You can fire your weapons at me, bullets which we can construe as ideas, the idea being to harm me. But if I don't agree with these ideas, my simulated experience will never have me falling foul to your fire. And so, springing back and forth, darting here and there, with the natural graces of the feline body form I was currently in, suggesting the reason for the choice of a body type, perhaps, that as I haven't agreement to be shot down, so the simulation will roll out in whatever way it does that presents as the means by which evading being shot will be so. And now I would come across a house, positioned on the beach, and on entering it, what met my feline eyes was an individual, a woman that impressions revealed was the one I was here to rescue, a stepping-up female human who had been captured by the dark forces and contained here, for the reasons I earlier described. She was heavily guarded by further militia, and those of a more senior rank and military experience and capability, and once again I was the recipient of a hail of bullets. But simulation must always follow agreement as decided by all participants in the experience, the captured, the aggressors, and the rescuers. And in this case, so it was, that even as bullets thudded into my body, I was unharmed, and seized the grateful woman from their clutches, rather unceremoniously bundling her over my shoulder like a sack of potatoes, and exited the house. Her agreements then facilitated her successful rescue, and the dark forces were thwarted. Outside on the beach once again, as the guards continued their futile assault, the woman and myself simply faded from the scene and beyond the dark force clutches. The woman human, as I said, another stepping up individual, beginning her process of awareness that may at some stage make her presence known on the physical.